So obviously we want to do a sort of thorough assessment and just make sure that there is nothing bigger than a concussion, that it's not more getting into sort of that brain injury, but hopefully that's all been sort of checked out medically at the time of the concussion. That's quite often the case, that people we're seeing in have been through a fairly sort of thorough medical checkup. But we're looking at what are some of the things that we can do to improve the quality of life of the person suffering with post-concussion syndrome. Are there things we can do to help manage their sensitivity to motion in the periphery? Are there things we can do to make their vision as clear as possible? Are there things we can do to reduce the photosensitivity or the light sensitivity? And so we tend to break it into, sort of what can we do with lenses? I mean, that's obviously a tool that is available to optometrists to be able to prescribe to patients. And so there may be prescriptions that help with focusing at near. We explore whether even small uncorrected refractive errors, whether that extra clarity actually helps someone. Sometimes people who have post-concussion vision syndrome can be quite sensitive to prescriptions, and so we might be doing the opposite. We might find that what they used to be wearing feels too strong now, and so it's about finding that kind of point where they're a little bit more comfortable. So there's a fair bit of time sort of exploring, what, not just what is the clearest lens for you, but what's also comfortable. We can obviously use things like tints to just reduce the volume of light or the intensity of light. Sometimes that might be specific colours if we find that people are sensitive to a particular part of the visual spectrum. So it can be anything from a grey tint through to a coloured tint. It can be sort of quite individual. And right through to, are they getting double vision? Do we need to have a look at any sort of prism? There are things within we call it neuro-optometry. So if we look at the neuro-optometry space, there are other things we can explore, like sectorial occlusion. It's probably a bit too big a topic to get into with this, but there are other things we can do with lenses just to try and reduce the overwhelm and the amount of information that the person's having to deal with.
Could contact lenses also play a role, or are you really sort of restricted to spectacles?
That's a tough one to answer because that's kind of a very individual situation. There is some dry eye, irritated eye kind of symptoms that can sometimes come in, and it may be something that's a bit too early. But if we have someone that we figure out that the magnification or the minification that you get from your prescription upsets your sense of where you are in space, that might be something where we explore using a contact lens, because we don't get as much of those magnification or magnification effects. So it's something that we'd have in our back pocket as a possibility based on how the person presents. But like I said, we'd have to kind of balance that out with dry eye state and things like that.
Okay. And you said that with the tints, that there's no one size fits all. Different people have different reactions to different tint colors. Is that right?
Yeah, and I think what will happen is within this space you'll get certain trends where there seems to be either blue or amber, as an example, seems to be a popular one, or it could just be a simple reduction in it. So, like I said, it might be just a little bit of grey is enough just to take the intensity out. But we do find some people seem to prefer a particular colour, and some of the research sort of says that yes, some people do have a preference, but even just like I said, a basic grey tint can be sort of helpful, and that's part of the individual approach, is that we've got all these sort of tools available to kind of work out, do we need to be going down the path of something very, very individualised, or can it be something more simple for you?
And with post-concussion syndrome, do you sort of give advice to people about how they can adjust their environment, whether that be at work or at home, to sort of accommodate those issues?
Look, a lot of the time they have made those adjustments themselves. And so sometimes what we're doing is looking at ways of, okay, are we able to get you to sort of handle life without having to live in a dark room, or, avoid those certain spaces? Can we sort of make those areas that you're avoiding easier to deal with by a simpler device?
Yeah. And so people like if people, maybe elderly people, are having problems with balance and judging distances, then there are probably things that they can do at home to make that a lot safer for them.
Yeah, and look, I guess the if we're getting into that sort of sphere, then that's where we might refer to physical therapists and
Yeah,
occupational therapists who are very well grounded at looking at
sure.
how people are living safely in their own homes, and so we'd probably lean into those sort of services because they're very, very well equipped. One of the things we haven't talked about is that there are another treatment that we do as part of concussion work is actually rehabilitation, and that's
Right.
restoring visual function. So that's where vision therapy comes into it. When we apply vision therapy to brain injury and concussion cases, we call it neuro-optometric rehabilitation because you're restoring binocular vision function, you're restoring ocular motor function, you're looking at whether you can sort of impact on visual processing. And so that's the second tail of our treatment. So we have the first tail, which is making people more comfortable. The second part is let's see if we can make improvements on the function that you've lost. And that's where we sometimes work in with physiotherapists, either from a vestibular point of view, so people who are getting dizziness and we suspect there's a vestibular component to their symptoms, or there's still some physical ailments that they need to work on.
Mm. Just educate me here. What's the vestibular?
Oh, vestibular is part of your balance mechanism. So it's your brain's way of detecting changes in movement. So we have these semicircular canals that are orientated to check different types of movements. We've also got a saccule and I've forgotten the other one, utricular, and that detects forward and back and up and down motion as well. And when you're making sense of movement in the environment, we have this visual input, but we need to understand if the movement that we're seeing is self-directed movement. So we need to get feedback from the body, proprioception in the neck and the rest of the body, and also those accelerometers to kind of go, oh, that movement was from X, Y, and Z.
Okay. It's a very complex mechanism
Absolutely.
that helps the brain to make sense of the world that we move through.
Yeah, which is why we say, vision's more than what you can read on the bottom line of the chart. There's so much going on. It's such a complex thing.